A lawsuit. We have to discuss this. Now, we know kind of the surface level that everyone knows. You know it intimately because you're involved in it. We're talking, of course, about the lawsuit that was filed against Clayton Echard last year that involved paternity tests and all this stuff. And then you got embroiled in it too. Can you give us just kind of a rundown of your involvement in this and what it has been like for you over the course of the last year?
Well, I am now officially a member of the Professional Society of Journalists, which is to
Oh,
better protect me from, I'm being threatened with many lawsuits. I was sued for harassment by a lady I refer to as Jane Doe. Her name is pretty easy to find. She's a self-help podcaster,
mhm.
and which, by the way, she
Hmm.
sues everybody, which is funny. Like,
And
if
this is
you're
the person who sued Clayton
That's
Echard
how
too,
you help
right?
yourself.
Yes, like she's like, yeah, if you
Lawsuits.
just sue people when you have problems, that's how you solve it. Like, I'm addicted to sugar. I'm going to sue brownies now. Like, that's her. So her dad was a very well-known radio DJ in San Francisco, to
Mhm.
the tune of making $1 million a year, big in his heyday, like the Rock Morning Channel or whatever.
Okay.
So she comes from this family that I guess is pretty well off. Clayton gets involved and he claims, and he's never changed his story, that they've never had sex. And of course, she leaks the story to The Sun, which she has now admitted to. They're the only magazine to run with this story, but it's, for the most part, ruined his life. His story hasn't
Hmm.
changed. Hers has changed considerably. Now, my reporting of it was pretty straightforward. Like, she thinks everything I do is pro Bachelor, but you guys know how it is. We're all pretty
Sure.
critical. I was critical of Colton Underwood when he stalked Cassie Randolph, and I covered that story. And now I've been critical of what believes to be a scam, where it has now been revealed she claims to have been pregnant by at least four different men. All have ended in abortions or miscarriages. So, polite in
Mhm.
respect to your audience, big trigger warnings on the whole conversation, because it's a lot of people's belief that she weaponized a very personal circumstance and used it to try to sucker men into dating contracts.
Are all of these men that she has sued previous on reality TV in some way?
No, that was her big mistake.
Okay.
She was able to get restraining
Hmm.
orders on the last three men, Mike, Greg, and now Clayton, and use those restraining, which by the way are very easy to get. Her restraining order against me was denied in LA Superior Court on First Amendment rights because she's never met me and I'm just reporting on the story. But she tried to get one against me as well. And she's also contacted the FBI and made wild allegations about me, all in an effort to get me to delete my content. She doesn't want the truth coming out.
Mhm.
She's what's beautiful about Bachelor Nation is it can be very toxic, but when people come together, the justice oriented members of the internet really have put in a lot of work.
She
Fourth,
underestimated the fourth audience, Bachelor
oh yeah.
Nation, their investigative skills as well.
Well, I always say it's ironic she took the story to the sun because the story all fell apart because she flew too close to the sun. She got way too. I mean, it's true. It's
Got
it's
her.
so it's so iron. It's so ironic. But she got, she benefited on the belief that nobody was watching in the previous cases. She had accusations of being pregnant, and then you would find out that they were reverse Google, image searched ultrasounds from previous blogs. And every
Hmm.
time her story would get smarter to the point where now she's claiming what's called invisible twin syndrome, which is one of the twins is absorbed, the other. So what happened was we kind of got onto the story early and knew she was full of shit. And trust me, the last thing I would have ever wanted to do is be like, I think she's about to claim she's going to have a miscarriage. Like, we knew she was going to do all of this because all of her correspondence, which she shared, she's claimed, oh, no one's sharing her side of the story. She's battling with people on Reddit. She's sharing all of her evidence that she's pregnant. It's all led back to fabrications. The internet found her twin ultrasound video to be fabricated from a 6-year-old YouTube channel. She now claims it wasn't hers, even though she sent it directly to Reality Steve. Like, we have all this evidence, iron tight. She's made claims about the date. Basically, she said she was intimate with Clayton, and he then shared the emails that she had redacted a lot of the emails. And it's one thing to redact names and phone numbers, but she redacted a subject line and people were like, what's in this email? Well, Clayton shared it. And it basically was him saying, hey, what are you doing, Jane? We've only had oral sex. There's no way I got you pregnant. She gaslighted him to the extent that he finally believed he was pregnant because she did test positive for indicators of pregnancy, a pregnancy test, which is the hormone HCG. Now that we're seeing her blood level, her levels of HCG were actually at 102, and the acceptable level for twins at that stage would have been like 20,000. So she was testing positive for HCG, knew she would test positive for pregnancies, and claimed she thought she was pregnant like as early as 5 days after the ill-fated blowies. So when you look at all this evidence, you go, and when you factor it with the fact that this happened over and over again, you go, wow, this is wild. And I think it's a fair assumption to make. Now, her new lawyer's threatening to sue me till I'm homeless. He knows my wife's pregnant, about to have a baby. He's threatening to put us out on the streets. I mean, it's real crazy what he's doing out there publicly. He's publicly commenting on all of this. And we're just like, hey, look, let us do our job. We're trying to get the truth out there.
Dave, have you ever had anyone come after you for reporting before?
No. I've never had an issue with the law. The only time I've ever been involved in like a deposition was when I was in a car accident and an insurance company had to depose me. But it was all on camera, and it was clearly a lady ran into me. But that was my only time I've never had any issues this way. I've never been threatened with a lawsuit. She sent me multiple cease and desists, and they were all just ridiculous. They were meaningless. And then she finally got an injunction against harassment on me called an IAH, which is essentially like a restraining order of the personal type. So non-family court, as in someone she wasn't in a relationship with. That trial kept on getting pushed back until the point where she eventually dropped her case against me. And some people say, oh, the case was settled. I didn't take $1 from her. She didn't take $1 from me. All she wanted was for me to delete my videos, and I refused to do that because this is the reporting. This is the truth.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to hide behind. The night before, so at this point I live in Nashville. I buy a refundable flight because I knew what game she was going to play. So the night before, I got one of those flights I could refund like 20 minutes before it takes off because I was going to take this all the way to the end, but I was prepared to go to LA. And I said, listen, you don't want to lose to me because I'll be doing this speech from the LA, court floor. I'll be like really going to make a big stink out of this. And the night before, she wanted me to agree to a stipulation that I wouldn't incite any violence onto her. And first of all, that's illegal. That's like agreeing to a stipulation. Like, I won't kill you. Like, of course I'm not going to incite violence. I never have. Not only that, I've got about 80 instances of my audience pulling together every time where I said, don't go in, don't do anything. She's going to use it against us, whatever. Well, I signed that because it's kind of one of those, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Mm-hmm. And she drops her case against me. Like something like 4 hours later, she gets a death threat sent to her. And people can sort of think what they want about where that death threat came from. But It came from an anonymous Facebook account. And she did, as far as I know, nothing to find out who the account was. And then it all just went away. And it was another, sort of interesting moment in this sort of saga of hers where she'll do anything to get the truth from surfacing and yet then complain when people, like, for instance, she wrote a couple Medium articles about me, calling me a cyberbully and all these things. I've never said her name like really publicly, even though I'm allowed to, because I didn't want her to play a victim here. I was like, you know what, we're just going to go for Clayton's justice. So she makes these articles where she calls me out by name. She, of course, said she was suicidal and she was going to kill herself if I kept making these videos, complete. And that's why the FBI got involved, because they have a division that covers people that are threatening self-harm. So I have like the audio I've played of Hannah Clark from the FBI calling Scottsdale police to do wellness checks on her. Like, all the systems are in place to protect her. But what she realized was people were Googling my name and then finding the truth and going, oh my gosh, she's made this all up. There's fraudulent medical records, there's repeat stories. And she then deleted my name from the conversation. She also released a video where, she's My guess is she's trying to fabricate victimhood, and because she had a story from a couple years ago based on one of her exes who was also a pregnancy story where the ex was verbally abusive to her, and that story she turned into a TEDx talk. So it's just my guess, like she's not necessarily out for money, but in today's world, she's out for something more like notoriety, maybe. I don't know. I struggle to know what her game plan is, other than it wasn't until Clayton decided, hey, we crossed the line, that she
I'm
kind
not
of.
really sure the game plan is well thought out here.
Yeah. But it does seem to be repetitive at the very least. I mean, do you think that Clayton became a part of this because she was seeking somebody who had like a higher profile to do this to?
Well, she was always on The League and other sort of high level dating websites. So one of her first one of the first man she claims to have been knocked up by, his name's Matt. He's a high end guy in San Francisco. His story only came out recently, and I don't give his full name out. It's on the internet, but he was outed by her own lawyer, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. But that story kind of went away, and we're calling him victim 0 because Mike Maricini's victim 1, Greg Gillespie victim 2, and Clayton Echard victim 3. And Greg Gillespie has a whole, slew of instances where she was creating limited, how like on Instagram you can send a story to your close friend audience. Well, from all accounts, she had him from a burner account, or she had his burner account as her limited friends, and was sending crazy messages like, can't wait for the twins to arrive, because she also claimed twin pregnancy with the last guy too. And I mean, just these instances of harassing, but she got away with it because she had a restraining order against him. With Clayton, he has received a injunction against harassment on her. So she has a restraining order on him. He has an IAH against her. They're not allowed to contact each other, but the judge ruled that, she sent 500 emails from multiple phone numbers. She wouldn't stop sending messages. He would unblock her to say, leave me alone, then reblock her. And she would take that as sort of, she gave him contracts that said, if we date with intention, I'll get rid of the baby. So she used the pregnancy, and whether or not people believe she was pregnant, which so far no one publicly does, because so far her medical records only show fabricated ultrasounds. The one ultrasound that has yet to be proven to be hers, she claims she got at Planned Parenthood Mission Viejo. But when you call Planned Parenthood Mission Viejo, they say, oh yeah, we don't even offer ultrasounds. Now, that ultrasound has the Scottsdale Medical Imaging Lab, SMIL logo on it. She now has admitted in her depositions to altering the ultrasounds to have the wrong locations on them. But she claims she did that because she didn't want Clayton to find her. Her lawyer has said, hey, if I find out she lies, I'm going to drop her. Now her lawyer is saying, so what that she lied? So it's just, it almost feels like I'm not in the same world of reality as some of these people were up against, because she keeps shifting the goalpost. So what happened was, we knew all along she was going to have a miscarriage because Clayton called her bluff. Clayton didn't play her game. He didn't sign the dating contract. He got an email from her mom saying, we can't find her. We think she's suicidal. You're the only one that can contact her, Clayton, which again, could have been an email from her. It just all read so suspicious. Well, come January, she finally says, I'm no longer pregnant. I don't want to talk about it. Let's dismiss this case. Let's dismiss the paternity case. And everyone's like, no. Like, let's continue this. This is wrong. And it was at that point she had started to write articles claiming to be the victim that I believe Clayton and everyone else knew. She's going to come back with a story in 6 months or a year about how the Bachelor was this deadbeat guy. So he wanted to make sure he could prove she was never pregnant. The other smoking gun information is that he finally got a pregnancy test, a paternity test done. She was under the belief you couldn't do a prenatal paternity test on twins, which, by the way, would make it very convenient if you claim to have twins. Well, they can't test paternity. And then so if you miscarry, you just would have never known who they were. So even though he claims they never had sex, as a guy does, or guy or gal who's being accused of something, he found a company that now does paternity testing prenatally using new state-of-the-art technology. They're called RavGen. So he gets RavGen involved, calls her bluff. They go to her house, draw her blood. They go, he goes to their lab. They draw the blood. It's all, there's no mixing of the evidence. This is done for like court orders. So they're very serious about it. Well, it comes back little to no fetal DNA. And
yes,
at that
we remember that video.
I remember that video.
Right, the first video I was in.
Happy Friday.
Man, when that video came out, I was in Qatar, in the Qatar airport in the Middle East. I just got back from my baby moon in the Maldives, which is south of India. I'm as far away from the world as you can be. But as you guys know, in the game of like breaking and like reporting on stories, I had 20 minutes before my flight boarded when that story came out. And I was like, if I don't get this story up now, I'm going to be thinking about it for the next 16 hours as it loses. Everyone else is going to cover it. I'm going to be watching Zachary Reality's TikToks going, it could have been me.
It could have been me.
And I literally had, I literally had my like my laptop open in the terminal, walking into the airport. Like I had already shot the video in the terminal, like this terrible quality video talking about the story. And then I had to like leave my laptop against the window of the flight as it was preparing to take off. And it uploaded at the last second, which again is meaningless, but just to show you how I was like, I got to be on this story. But then, little to no fetal DNA. She comes back and says, you guys are wrong. The testing's ongoing. This is nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. Little to no fetal DNA when there are twins means they could not find evidence of any DNA in her blood that was not hers. Not even whether or not it was him as the father. So say they find DNA and then they proves it wasn't his. That's a normal paternity case. Jerry Springer style is, all right, I had sex with these two guys. Who's the dad? These tests aren't set up for instances where there's nothing to find. So it's almost me being like, go find that treasure I know is buried back over there. And you're like, we can't find it. And then I go, well, that doesn't mean it's not there. You just didn't find it. So it's almost like you can't prove the negative. So they do a second test, a third test. They've done 4 tests. 3 have come back little to no fetal DNA. The other test was delayed in transit, so they couldn't use it because the blood, it took too long to get there. So you got a professional company that says little to no, I mean, to the point, trust me, I've thought to myself so many times, is Clayton lying to me? I need to make sure I'm not being duped. I'm reporting on this. I get him on the phone. I call RavGen, the company, and because I can't get the information without either him or Jane Doe, accessing it. And they say, look, we can't print this out for you, but we can tell you there's little to no fetal DNA. And it wasn't until, so I heard it from my own ears. I have the recording of it. They knew I was recording it. And it wasn't until the recent court orders where they're actually getting whatever the scientific paperwork is of that. But it's like, it's wicked. It's wicked to be sued and threatened for lawsuits when all we're doing is trying to follow the evidence. I'm a big believer in people, except when there's cases where they're trying to deceive. And I think it's clear that there's been multiple cases where she's done the same thing. I mean, who's 32 years old that's been pregnant at least 4 times, several times with twins, and had very similar circumstances where she never proved she had ultrasounds? And by the way, anyone who's pregnant listening to this going, this is so easy to prove. I mean, I could go into you with a gun to my head in the next minute. I could show you 15 different ultrasounds of my beautiful, baby boy who's due next week. I could show you every 2 weeks we go for the first, I don't know, 4 months. And then they kind of do the Doppler readings of the heart. And you have so much evidence. And she's not some, poor person who doesn't have access to medical care. Her dad's receiving the best medical care for Parkinson's. She comes from a wealthy family. She clearly can go get an ultrasound, and she hasn't provided that evidence. And of all of the places so far where they've said they were going to disclose this evidence, it's come back that it doesn't exist. Now, the reason why Clayton was doing a good job fighting this on his own, but we saw that, she showed up to their injunction against harassment hearing with a lawyer, and we were like, oh boy, he was making good points, but they were objecting to it. Like, he just didn't know how to work as a lawyer in the system. He's not a lawyer. So even though he showed up with his binder full of information, it was getting a little dodgy. Well, what happened was, they didn't have enough time to finish the case. So the judge said, we're going to meet back next week. And it was after that moment, we started the GoFundMe, raised money for him. And he raised enough money to hire the same lawyer that represented the previous guy, Greg Gillespie, victim number 2. That lawyer has a bone to pick with Jane Doe
Sure.
because
Mhm.
she filed she emailed the judge, which you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to directly email the judge. She emailed the judge saying, I have reason to believe there is and I hate to say it, but a rape conspiracy out against me from Greg and his lawyer, who's also named Greg. And this lawyer had never met her before. The judge said, this is wildly, inappropriate.
What
and
is a rape conspiracy?
I don't know, like they had some conspiracy to do like literally all of these things. And she emailed them privately in hopes that there would be maybe some girl power moment where they help her out. But they're like, no, they reported it. They shared it. It's all in the medical records. And then she just goes on with her case. So now you've got Clayton who's been fighting this probably to the tune of $150,000 legal bill. He's got a lawyer who's fighting this and paying his own
time.
Yeah, I mean, he's fighting it with his own time, but also he's got to pay his own lawyers to be a part of it. And now they have bar complaints filed against them, and all they're trying to do is put an end to the senseless litigation.
But if it goes to litigation and Clayton wins, generally speaking, all of his legal fees will be paid for by her.
Yes, if she has the money. Now, whether she has the money or not is yet to be seen. Although, as I reported this week, her lawyer, who's been blogging and doing all of this public, blogging he's made like the lawyers just don't do this. They stick to the case. But he made this concession and said, well, since Jane Doe first met Clayton because he was her real estate agent, apparently the lawyer says she had $450,000 in her checking account ready to buy a couple homes. Now, I don't believe that. I haven't seen the proof of that, but we have seen evidence where she's admitted to fabricating documents. So whether she had that money or not, you can imagine as Clayton's pulling away from her and saying, oh, I don't think we should be doing this. She's saying, are you kidding me? I'm trying to buy 2 homes from you. You'll have $100,000 or $200,000 commission. So she's almost dangling this financial contract with him over him. So she wanted to buy some homes. He didn't put the offer in. And as her real estate agent, he had a contractual duty to do that. And I don't know the specifics of it, but he claims he tried to pass her off to someone else in the law firm. It was literally like his second week at the law firm, and he had to be like, hey, I got 2 blowjobs from this lady, and I can't represent her now. She's kind of like texting me nonstop. So he passes her off. And what happened recently, again, this was all in the summer and fall, but what happened recently was this case is happening June 10th. All of the evidence is on Clayton's side. I mean, her side's got the fringe legal theories because she changed the date of miscarriage like 5 different times. And there's obviously no proof of the bodies, even though she claims she had photos of the fetal sacs. I mean, one thing after another. Now she claims they were absorbed. How could there be proof? And again, there is such thing as vanishing fetal syndrome or twin syndrome where like you lose a twin, but that's early on in a pregnancy, not after she claimed in her deposition that they were the size of her hand. So she sends an email to Clayton's attorney, Greg Woodnick, saying, I'm going to sue Clayton for $1.36 million because that's the amount of money lost based on the homes I was going to buy. Now, first of all, she wasn't going to pay cash for the homes anyway. So like she wouldn't have lost out on that much money. They weren't going to have gone up in value and all those things in this amount of time. Maybe she would have been out 80 grand or whatever. I don't know. But that never happened. He didn't take her seriously. But they shared that email in court documents as like, hello, she's extorting my client. So she said, I'm going to sue you for 1.36 million unless we can reach an agreement where you drop this lawsuit against me. So it's just like, it's just insane that this is happening right under everyone's nose. And no one really knows what the judge thinks because the judge at this point has been like a rock star, but she's just quietly letting it all play out. Sure. Every attempt that Jane Doe has made to have this case dismissed, the judge has said no. Clayton's lawyer has asked for more time to litigate their point from 45 minutes to 2 hours. The judge has said yes. So the judge, the Clayton's asked for a discovery to show like, hey, we just want to find out her medical records. The judge gave it like an extra 3 years rather than just finding the 2023 info. I think the judge said, go get it all the way back to 2020. Nothing, crickets. And the best thing I can say, because I know we share a big audience, Bachelor Nation has had Clayton's ass by raising the money to get him a lawyer. During the harassment hearing, his lawyer, Clayton's lawyer, was able to ask so many great questions that got her on the record saying she was seeing Dr. McCool for this and for that. I saw Dr. Higley. They got her to say all these things on record. And now her new lawyer, because she's been through 12 different lawyers throughout all of the different proceedings, through the Clayton case, at least 3 lawyers. But now the lawyer says she never claims she received medical attention from those doctors. She just claims she sought medical attention from them. So the lawyer's trying to play this like linguistic, battle.
Yeah.
But she's on record saying, I saw this guy last week. So it's like she's just caught dead in the water. And yet new motions are coming out. As of today, her lawyer says they've got the new evidence. She's never shared it with anybody. Look, I mean, if she shows evidence that's like real evidence that she was pregnant, I would change my story. But as of now, it's like you just follow the evidence. You just follow it, or lack thereof.
Wow, this is fascinating. June 10th, you say, is the date of the trial, unless before then anything can happen, right? There could be a settlement, cases can be dropped, but Clayton's not going to drop his case.
They'd have to pay him like at least $10 million. I mean, what's it worth to have a settlement where you can no longer talk about this? He's lost gigs over it. She's emailed. I mean, there's documents
over a year of his life.
How are you going to let Clayton, this guy who's threatening me, be a self-help speaker? So people err on the side of caution. He could be proven innocent and still this could affect him for years to come.
Of course, because it'll be like when you Google his name, this will be attached to it forever.
Yeah,
it's a crappy situation. But thank you so much for explaining it all in great detail. I feel like that, to me, that's the most comprehensive explanation of the entire situation I've ever heard.
Oh, good. I mean, trust me. I always tell people, like, how much time do you have? It's a 10-hour convo or a 20-minute, but I'm still being threatened by her lawyer. I mean, I'm really to the point where I'm putting my house in a trust and I'm protecting myself and I'm looking for insurances because he's threatening to make my wife and my family homeless. I mean, this is what he's saying publicly. It's bananas that this exists. There have been bar complaints filed against him, but it's like, even if you think Bachelor Nation News is trash, it's like, this is like what side, like everybody's on the side of the truth coming out.
For sure. I totally agree.
I thank you for going out on your own limb to expose the truth about this, because you're getting wrapped up in it. It's
I mean, thank you. They donated money to my legal bills, like the audience. They've supported the Patreon. They've come out of the woodworks to show that it's worth pursuing. And I just keep telling them, hey, keep fighting it, but I'm going to keep making videos about it. And, I've gained some audience and I've lost some. Not everyone wants to hear stories about such a heavy topic, but I think it's the only way to fight it is to have the monetized aspect of it, to say, I have no involvement, but I will continue to talk about it because an audience wants to see this justice, as niche as this might be. I mean, you've got medical experts contacting me from all over the country, like heads of departments at Ivy League schools that want a piece of this because they want to get the truth out there, because this is wrong. This is wrong for victims. This is wrong for the family court system. It's just wrong. And, I think, like I said, the only way to put it is I think she flew too close to the sun.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for the layout of all of this stuff. We're going to obviously be very curious to see what happens June 10th. If this thing does go to trial, I don't know. From everything you've said, I have a feeling she may drop it, but then there's still Clayton's lawsuit,
but here's the
right?
thing. She can't drop it now.
It's been triggered.
She wanted the case dismissed, and he's saying, no, like both sides. He's saying, no. I want to prove, like, he's now the only case left now that she's dropped her end. She's like, oh, there's no more paternity, case closed. And he's going, no. Now they're only arguing for fees, which means the judge will decide who's right and who's wrong here, because a lot of money on the table. So unless something wild happens, I'll be there June 10th. I'm going to live stream from the courthouse all day because I have a vested interest. I mean, Clayton's my lead blocker. I need to know that he's as protected legally as possible, because what the judge says on June 10th is going to really protect me.
Yeah. We look forward to hearing your coverage of it, obviously.
Of course.